This is the Real Estate Rookie Podcast, episode 277.
You've learned so much on this first deal, Sara, that I'm sure if we talk to Sara today versus Sara 6 months ago, you're two totally different people when it comes to your knowledge of real estate investing. So even if you're able to walk away from this deal eventually down the road at a break even, it's still the multiple, the return on that is 10x, 100x, because you've been able to learn and give yourself the tools you need to keep growing.
Thank you. Yeah, I knew that this was just going to hopefully be just a growing in equity and break even for a few years. So that's fine. It's the digging myself into a hole right now. It's just what's...
My name is Ashley Kerr, and I'm here with my co-host, Tony Robinson.
And welcome to the Real Estate Rookie Podcast, where every week, twice a week, we bring you the inspiration, motivation, and stories you need to hear to kickstart your investing journey. And today I want to give a shout out to someone who goes by the name of Andrew. Andrew left us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and his review reads, "Great host, amazing company, unforgettable information. Bigger Pockets is one of the most altruistic companies I know. They provide so much value free of charge, and this podcast does not disappoint. Very knowledgeable guests and amazing hosts, definitely worth checking out." If you haven't yet, if you're a part of the rookie community and you have not yet left an honest rating and review on whatever platform it is you're listening to, please take the few minutes it takes to do that. The more folks or the more reviews we get, the more folks we can reach, and the more folks we reach, more folks we can help. And that's what we love doing here. I feel like we've been getting like a string of really positive reviews as of late, Ashley, and it really helps my super tiny ego, my super sensitive ego when I hear all this positive feedback.
Sara is a special guest today because I did a giveaway on the pre-order that when someone pre-ordered the book, Real Estate Rookie, 90 Days to Your First Investment, one person would get to come on the show with me and Tony, and we'd get to interview them, but also they could ask us some questions and how we can really help them on their journey. So Sara is completely honest that she bawled her eyes out yesterday and things are not going as she expected with the rehab of the property. So we kind of go through what, she has accomplished. She was stuck in analysis paralysis for a couple of years, finally took action, and we talk about what that action is and how she found that momentum. And now that she's into the property, something that has come up, and how she's going to kind of work through it and overcome it.
Yeah. And Sara's got there's one part of the episode where she gets super vulnerable and really just we go into kind of like a deep conversation about the challenges that come along with being a real estate investor. And I'm so appreciative that she opened up to us in that way, because I think it sheds a light on the part of real estate investing that doesn't get talked about enough. And that's the challenges and the doubt and the fear, and how do you kind of work through that. And we spend, I think, a decent part of the episode just kind of reframing those challenges that she's going through and kind of positioning them in a way that actually supports Sara and her long-term goals of building wealth through real estate.
Yeah, when Sara first found out that she was the winner, she won this, she declined it, actually. She said, "No, I don't. I just got my first property under contract. Like, I haven't really done any real estate investing yet. Like, I don't think this is really for me." And so I had someone email her back and say, just, "You are perfect. You're in it right now." And like, we love how this podcast episode came out, because she is literally in the nitty gritty right now. And somebody who maybe did this a year ago or 2 years ago, there's things that they're not going to remember, things they're going to forget as they're telling their story. So I think listening to how this is impacting her right now, it can motivate you and inspire you, but also it can show you like what some risks are. So take a listen to today's episode and take it with a grain of salt, is that it's not always going to be picture perfect. There's not always going to be this huge win at the end, or maybe there still will be for her. We just don't know yet. And that was why I thought it was so intriguing and interesting to listen to somebody who's kind of in the trenches of it right now on their first ever deal. Sara, thank you for purchasing the Real Estate Rookie book too.
Oh, I
appreciate it.
I got it. I thought it was spam that I won this.
Yeah.
I almost deleted it.
Well, we're super happy to have you here. Tell us about before even real estate, as to kind of who you are and maybe what brought you to find real estate investing.
Yeah, I'm an interior designer in San Diego. And about 5 years ago, I started casually looking into real estate investment just for fun, looking at places I like to visit and learning about money management and personal finance and mindset and figuring out how I could do it. I didn't really know. I didn't have any tools at the time. So I just look at expanders and people who have done it before and how I can do it. So 3 years ago, I found you guys and just gobbled up as much information as I could. I was buying all the books and watching the podcasts and YouTube and really trying to get as much information and catch up as I could. And a couple years after that, I started realizing, I got some analysis paralysis going on here, trying to be perfect and get everything right and have this fear of failure. So it was this mindset balance that I was trying to go through a lot. And I watched a couple friends buy properties, and that really motivated me and lit a fire under me to okay, let's get serious. Let's start making some offers and take some action steps. So I was meeting with realtors that I met through Bigger Pockets and brokers and getting my spreadsheet in line and my cash flow, figuring out what I could do and what my strategy was. And if one strategy didn't work, I'd pivot and go over to another direction and explore that for a little bit and go over here. So about a year ago, I got serious and ended up, I put one offer in and got outbid by $5,000. But that was good practice. But again, then I pivoted to a different location that had a little bit less competition, and it was closer to where I live. And the market started to change, and I just kept the big picture perspective and thinking, okay, maybe this is less competition for me. And even though the interest rates are higher, I can refi later, and just made it work with what I had. And then made an offer a week after it was listed, and it got accepted.
Yay!
Man, congrats.
I want to touch on real quick one thing that you said that was really important. And you talked about the analysis paralysis. Then you said you got to the point where it's okay, I have to take action. And right after that, you said you started making offers. And that right there is just such a huge thing where people don't even make the offers. They never even make it to that step as to feeling comfortable to putting offers in. So why do you think that you decided to make offers? What are some of the things that made you feel comfortable and confident that you're ready to put those offers in, whether they're accepted or not?
Yeah, it was scary. But I had seen a lot of places that I wasn't really sold on, and this one fit, and I thought it was manageable, and it fit in the cash flow for, living in it for a year for me and then doing a short-term rental after. So just running the numbers constantly. And it did feel like a little bit of a stretch at the time. Like being in California is a bigger investment for what you get.
Yeah, well, congratulations, Sara, on just like taking that action, because I think so many people get stuck at that phase. So the fact that you're able to push through that, I think is super impressive. But something else you mentioned outside of the analysis paralysis was the fact that you saw other people in your network who were taking that step. And that was part of what gave you the kind of confidence to do it yourself. And I think that's such an important thing to call out, because for a lot of our rookie listeners, they're kind of on this island by themselves, right? They're binge watching or binge listening to the podcast, and they're binge watching the YouTube channel, and they're reading all the books, but then they look to their left and they look to their right, and they're the only person that's doing this in their current circle. And that's why we stress so much, Ashley and I, the importance of building your network so that there are other people around you who are going through that same journey. So whether it's, the Bigger Pockets forums, the Real Estate Rookie Facebook group, joining some of the Bigger Pockets boot camps or other coaching programs, like whatever you can do to surround yourself with people, that gives you the confidence to say, well, man, if Ashley and Tony can do it, I'm just as smart as those guys are. Like, I'm sure I can do it too. So I love hearing that. I want to talk a little bit more about kind of your buy box, because you talked about kind of shifting markets, you mentioned that before we started recording, you live in San Diego, California, which is a pretty expensive market for most folks. So I guess two questions. A, why not invest in your backyard? Was it just the price point or was it something else? And then B, how did you kind of solidify, okay, this is the type of market that I'm looking for? Because the country is a big place. How did you narrow it down to one specific city?
I wanted to be local, and I felt like that was more manageable for me. But at the time when I was looking around San Diego, I thought, okay, maybe I can get a duplex and burr it and with an FHA, but I had my parents co-sign with me, so that threw a little wrench in to the buy box. So then I was just pivoting around to condos. I mean, I only had about a $500,000. That was pushing it at the time too. Limit. So I had to make sure that I could cover the mortgage and how I would do that. So it started to feel outpriced in my backyard for me. So then I just went out to a vacation spot an hour and a half away that I love to visit and feels good. Like you get out of the city, it'll draw people out to just kind of regroup and get grounded and escape from reality. So it's fun.
What are you in Julian, California? I assume that's where. Okay, yeah, that's like the closest vacation spot to San Diego. So can you just describe what Julian is for folks that aren't familiar with SoCal?
Yeah, Julian is, I think, one of the only places around SoCal that's 4 seasons. So right now we've been hit with a lot of snow and a lot of rain, but then we'll have super blooms in the spring and then a pretty dry summer, kind of like the desert, about 95 degrees, and then goes into a beautiful fall where all the leaves change and it's pumpkin picking and apple picking. So it's really family oriented. There's hiking, it's a dark sky network.
And Sara, I love, and I'm kind of leading because I wanted to follow up with this, is that the majority of our listeners probably have never heard of Julian, California. And even for me, like I'm an hour and a half north of you, and I never really heard of Julian either until I started knowing people in San Diego. But for people that are in like south of where I'm at, everyone knows Julian. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that every pocket of the country, every state has its own kind of local, kind of regional spot where it's like, hey, yeah, if I want to go to the snow, this is where we go. Or, hey, if I want to go to the river, this is where I go. Or, hey, if I want to go to the lake, this is where, if I want to go mountain biking, like every state has its own little area that caters to the kind of that traveler. And so many people ask me, Tony, how do I find the right market? How do I know where to invest? And really, I say it doesn't really matter. You could pick any state, you could drop a pin on any map in any of the states in the United States, and you're going to find at least one market that makes sense. So the fact that Julian works for you, I think is an important thing for us to call out to the listeners.
Yeah, I heard somebody say that they put a pin where they live and they went out about an hour and then just went around a radius and like, what's manageable for me? Mexico? The ocean? Okay, over here.
So, Sara, what's kind of the plans with this cabin then, this property? Can you tell us a little more about it?
Yeah, one of the selling points was it was a 2+1 upstairs and a studio downstairs. So having those kind of 2 incomes eventually really helped the cash flow and made the price point worth it for me. And it just evenly balanced. So as soon as I move out, then I hope to get a long-term renter in there, just because I've listened to the communities where everyone's investing, and I want to provide some kind of local housing for people, as well as using part of it for a vacation spot for people and create that balance.
You've got the 2-1 upstairs, the studio downstairs. So you're currently living in the property, correct? And then the plan is to rehab, or how are you?
Yeah, I got a rehab.
Okay.
More than I thought. Like, there were a couple issues. There was an active leak when I put the offer in, and they were dealing with their insurance. So I was under the impression that everything would get fixed as they were going through and get the insurance to clear off. Then they whittled it down to the cause of the leak being these upstairs doors upstairs on the patio. And the basement studio is below it.
Oh, so it was coming in through the doors, like the doors weren't sealed, and then coming down into the unit. Okay.
Well, whoever put these doors in put in wood doors without an overhang. So the wind and the water and snow just kind of seeped in. So they gave me credit to replace the doors. got the property, ordered the doors, have them ready to be installed, and there's still a leak. So I'm just like, there's so much water on the mountain. It's just soaking wet. And I shoveled, on my first day I got the keys, I shoveled 2 feet of snow off that 20-foot patio with a huge, heavy shovel. It was just like, over the railing. It was mountain welcoming to me.
That's got to be like one of the best welcome to real estate investing stories that I've heard on this podcast in a while. Like the day that you close, you have to shovel 2 feet of snow. That's awesome.
Especially when you live in San Diego.
Yeah.
Like for me, that's normal to go to a property and do that.
No. I don't do snow, really. Last time I was in Telluride for a friend's wedding and I fell. I mean, anyway, so it's a learning curve. And it's fine, but it's just now in the discovery phase of other things that I'm starting to need to put some more focus on and pivot my budget.
So are you having to remodel both units?
I was only planning on the upstairs.
Okay.
That would be like, because that's the cabin vibe. It's got the wood ceilings and the beautiful fireplace and really cozy.
Just really quickly, Asha, I want to pick your brain. So obviously, Sarah, this is your first investment, and every time we buy a property, we learn something new. For me, I feel like and it depends on the property, right? But like I often try and get the seller to repair, depending on kind of what our goal is, but like to repair certain things, right? Like if it's something like, like aesthetic demos, I know I'm going to change that stuff myself anyway. So like, I'm not going to ask the seller to put in new flooring or redesign the bathrooms. But for example, we just bought a property and we had the seller replace the septic tank because we knew that the septic tank was bad. And it could have been on us, he just would have given us a credit to go out there and have it done ourselves post-closing, or to have the seller do it. And we push really hard to have the seller repair it because there is that unknown of like, okay, what if it's more than the septic? Like what happens after that? So Ash, I'm just curious, like when you're buying deals, how do you kind of determine what you're going to solve and fix versus what you want to push towards the seller?
All of my properties are pretty much as is. Like they are so bad that you can't even pick and choose. Like for me to say I want this fix, it's just like, come on, Ash, look at this property. Like that's not going to do anything to improve it. So I never ask for anything to be done. Maybe if I started to focus more on things that weren't as big of rehab projects, maybe I would ask for things, but I'm putting in my offers knowing that I'm going to have to be doing a lot of work and a lot of different things. The probably one thing I would ask for, though, is the septic and the well to be done. I think that is a great example. When I flipped a house in Seattle, Washington, we purchased the property with no inspection, but we did ask for a sewer scope because in Washington, or at least in Seattle, if there's some law or regulation where if the sewer needs to be fixed or something, or the sewer line needs to be fixed to your house, if you are the new owner taking it over, you're not grandfathered into some kind of thing or whatever. But if you are the current owner of the property and you go and make that repair, that it's it's a lot cheaper because you don't have to do something. I don't remember exactly what the law was. So that was something the person I was partnering with, they always asked if there was something wrong with that sewer line connecting to the main. They would always ask for the seller to make that repair, even if they had to add on to the purchase price to cover the cost of it, because it was so much cheaper to have the current owner purchase the property than to repair that thing than to have you as the new owner do that.
Cool. Awesome, Sarah. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously that first deal is where you're going to learn a ton. So I'm glad that we're getting some good learning lessons from this one. I wanted to circle back quickly to the numbers on this deal. So if you wouldn't mind, just kind of walk us through what your purchase price was, what your total cash to close, and kind of what you're projecting for the rehab costs.
So it was a $500,000 and I did 5% down. And here's where I messed up on my numbers. I only allocated 1.5% for closing costs when I should have probably put 3% down. And I had spoken to probably 4 different lenders.
And why was that, Sarah? Was there something else that came up in your closing costs that made it double?
Yeah, because I'm in California too, and I usually budget about 2% for our closing costs.
Yeah, I don't think I knew to pay a year in advance for insurance and then 4 months for property tax or whatever that was. But what was good is I got a $9,500 credit from the seller that went right into closing costs, so it made it really even. And after the inspection report, which, raised some eyebrows, I called in a contractor to do a walk just to see, like, is this thing going to fall off the hill? Is it going to, is this worth it? Am I going into a money pit? He's like, no, but there are some fixes that you're going to want to do. And you could probably do it for $30,000. And then furniture would be on top of that. So that's what I broke down. And I was constantly going back to these numbers, like each part that needed to be upgraded, what that cost would be. And then it made sense. But, now that I'm in it.
So did you have an actual inspector come, or you just used the contractor? So you had both the inspection report and then the contractor. Okay. I think that's a great mix to do if you can do both of those to get two different points of view. So at this time, were there things that were different that the inspector said that should be done that maybe the contractor didn't, or anything like that?
Yeah, a lot of the leak was pointed again to these French doors on the patio. They voluntarily put in a French drain behind the house at their cost of $11,000 to keep the water going away from the house. And when I got in there, water was still coming underneath the house in that location. It could be the water heater. It could just be water coming from who knows what direction. I don't know, but it makes me wonder, because they didn't disclose any subterranean water intrusion. Why did they voluntarily put in an $11,000 French drain? That wasn't really done properly. It wasn't down as deep as it needs to go either. So it's getting like one plumber in, it's just like, sell it immediately. And one guy says, okay, let's figure out what we can do to just like keep moving along and take it in stages. But it's been overwhelming.
One question I just want to ask, because you kind of glossed over this, but as a first-time investor, you were able to find a contractor to come walk your property with you, which is a challenge for so many new investors, is finding the right contractor.
Even experienced investors can get someone to come.
to get someone to like actually show up. So can you walk us through, Sarah, how you found that person and what they charged you, if anything, to do that walkthrough with you?
Yeah. Thank you for asking, because when I pivoted over to Julian, I really wanted to use a local realtor. And she has been invaluable because she's had bread and breakfast 2 or 3 different spots since the 90s. So she knows people, she knows all the subs, she knows the best contractors. So it was her high reference of a really good local contractor. So he came out, I paid him $350, and then he gave me a report of like, here are things to address. And then on the side, he told me the estimate of what it would probably run, which is about $30,000. And I come from interior design and construction. I know those numbers just like get out of hand. So part of me is just kicking myself for being naive or I don't know.
So what would you have done differently in that situation? Like looking back now?
Yeah. Yesterday I was wishing that I was having buyer's remorse and a lot of regret. And that was in the morning when that one plumber said, I've dealt with people who just throw money into this situation and spend $70,000, and it's just like you're chasing your own tail. But then I talked to 3 other people later that day, and I ended up talking to one guy who was trying to find the positive in the situation, say, look, let's handle these 3 things. Let's get the flood under control and get a wall up there and start to finish up the upstairs. I
just want to pause on this for a second, because first, Sarah, I totally appreciate the transparency and the vulnerability here on the show, because these are things that so many of us struggle with as investors. Is like, man, am I making the right decision? Am I going down the right path? Did I just royally mess up? Right? Like, these are all things that we struggle with at times. So just first, know that you're not alone. Second thing is, I guess let me ask this question first. how much cash flow annually were you anticipating to make on this first deal?
Yeah, upstairs is probably only 52 because ballpark for the upstairs was like $250 a night at 50% occupancy. Usually Thursday to Monday. It's not as much as Joshua Tree area. And that was just like cutting it close a little bit with the long-term renter eventually. I thought that would be something stable. But when I move out and fix the downstairs, I got a short-term rental the downstairs just to recoup some money and have some pause. Just have some pause down there that I have some days to come in and fix things if something's going on.
Yeah. So here's the reason I ask that question, because even if you're able to break even on this first deal, right? Even if you're able to break even, in my mind, it still achieves its purpose. Because Ashley didn't retire off of her first deal. I didn't retire off of my first deal. David Green didn't retire off of his first deal. Beardy Brandon didn't retire off of his first deal. Rob, I haven't met a single person that did one deal and they were just like, I'm done. I'm riding off into the sunset. The purpose of the first deal is to educate yourself. The purpose of the first deal is to give you the foundation. It's to give you the structure, to give you the confidence so you can go out and get your second deal, and then your third deal, and then your fifth deal, and then your 10th deal. So you've learned so much on this first deal, Sara, that I'm sure if we talk to Sara today versus Sara 6 months ago, you're two totally different people when it comes to your knowledge of real estate investing. So even if you're able to walk away from this deal eventually down the road at a break even, it's still the multiple, the return on that is 10x, 100x, because you've been able to learn and give yourself the tools you need to keep growing.
Thank you. Yeah, I knew that this was just going to hopefully be just growing in equity and break even for a few years. So that's fine. It's the digging myself into a hole right now. It's just
Well, I think too, you talked to that first plumber and he was like, sell it, get rid of it. But you went and you talked to other people. There are people that would have just given up right then and there and just it's over. I need to list it. I need to basically give it away. I'm going to lose, $50,000 on it and sell it for less than what I got it for. But instead, that same day you talk to other people. And I think that is such a major takeaway is don't always rely on one opinion, one person. That you went and you had other plumbers come and look at it. And the fact that one of them was saying let's tackle these things first. Let's get into it and take it steps by steps where maybe it's more taking it in these little parcels, these little segments, can kind of break it down for you and build out a plan. And just like doing a full rehab, you want to have a plan in place where myself, and I'm sure Tony too, where we have both done rehab projects where it's okay, let's just get it started. Let's wing it. And but really the best ones go where you have that plan in place. And I think that you found a contractor that knows that too, where he can help you. Let's take it step by step and try to kind of mitigate the damage. And one thing that we have done is kind of look at an issue and to see, okay, where's something that we can not even stop the bleeding, but slow the bleeding. So, slow down the water that's coming in and then, then work on actually stopping it. And then what's the actual solution to solving this complete problem so that it doesn't happen again? And that may take a little bit of time, but if you can keep working on the upstairs, because there's no water coming into the basement, is there?
It's in the basement.
Or I'm sorry, the upper one.
So no, there's no water coming in to the upstairs. It's only the downstairs basement. And it's either the water heater, a subterranean, or maybe a leak from the patio into the storage unit next door.
So I think part of it too is that you can still continue to work on getting that short-term rental operational. So then you have that income coming in to kind of offset some of these rehab costs that you may need to do to get that basement unit finished.
Exactly. And just wait for it to dry up next month. We have a couple of rains coming in again. The good thing is that I came in knowing what this problem was going to be. If I would have bought it in the summer when it was dry, and then this came and out of the blue, I would have been rocked. At least there's kind of got thrown in the deep end right away.
Sara, what are your, and there's a reason I'm asking this question, but what are your long-term goals? Like, are you hustling to replace your income from your interior design business like as fast as possible so you can exit that? Is real estate more of a long-term play where you're looking to supplement your retirement? Help us understand the kind of context of why you got started.
Yeah, I will still work. I love doing interior design. But this is definitely a retirement goal. So it's figuring out how to diversify my assets. And, I'm in my 40s, I'm single, and I'm looking forward to like, what am I going to do for some stability in 25 years? And collecting a portfolio that I can eventually have as passive income would be good. And some stability for me. I'd like to have my own home. But like San Diego is, during COVID, it just got out of control. Everybody moved here.
Yeah. And the reason why I ask about your goals, Sarah, is because I think that helps align or kind of frame this first deal in an even better perspective, because you don't need this deal to work out today, right? For you to feel financially stable. And I think what you need to start asking yourself is, does this deal still make sense 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 15 years from now? And just the fact that you bought in a Southern California market, that by itself, assuming history continues the same trend it's been on, it's going to appreciate over the next 5, 10, 15 years. So even if you just hold on to this and it's just break even for those 10 years and it's just kind of paying for itself, you've got an asset that's, wildly appreciated over that same time frame. Now you can refinance, now you can sell it, and you've got so many different ways to kind of tap into that equity. So there are lots of ways to kind of frame this, Sarah, where even though it seems scary in the moment, I still do think that there's a lot of upside for you.
And that's what the contractor told me, because I was looking at him. I'm like, am I buying a money pit? Tell me straight up. And he's like, no, get yourself in the market, get your foot in the door, and then just deal with it as it goes. He's like, look, this house has been here. It's lasted this long. All of us are up here on the mountain.
Well, Sara, we really appreciate your honesty and also sharing what your experience has been like. There is nothing better than hearing someone's story as they're going through it instead of years later where, if you were telling the same scenario 2-3 years from now, I bet there's a lot of that you would just forget about. It's like childbirth. You have that first child and you're like, I'm never doing it again. That was so painful. That was awful. And then, a year later, like, oh, the baby fever. It's like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I'm going to do it again.
I can totally relate to that feeling. Yeah.
I might get a partner next time. Yeah, I'm going to get a partner next time so I can, everyone can have some lips.
And that was my first deal was with a partner, because I was scared something like what you're going through would happen. And the partner I chose had a really good network of people who could help us. And he also had a lot of cash savings. And so I think for me, that was like my security blanket when I first started, is having somebody else to kind of go through it, where it wasn't just me, that if I fell down, there was someone else to fall down with me, I guess, in a sense. And just having those two minds to kind of figure out, what's next. So what's your plan going forward, and what can we kind of help you with on this property or the next property?
I think getting the management software organized so that I can just get the flow and take a little stress off of me, because now I'm having to focus a little bit more on rehab and staging it. If I could just, which ones do you guys, I think you talked about guesty or hospitable. So I'm not sure which one you guys, what works the best for you?
Yeah, Tony, you could probably answer the short-term rental one better, and then I can touch on the long-term side.
Yeah, absolutely, Sarah. So there's a few pieces of our software stack. So I think the first piece that you need is some kind of channel manager or property management software. There are several out there. We use a company called Hospitable. Another big one is called Guesty. Owner Res is another big one. So I think just kind of finding the one that you feel is most intuitive to you. They all pretty much do about the same thing. I think it's just the interface and usability that makes the most sense for you to choose one. The second thing you absolutely need is a dynamic pricing tool. We use Price Labs. AirDNA is another big one as well. There's a couple other ones out there. Wheelhouse, I think, is another one that folks use. But if you want to maximize your revenue, Typically, you don't want to use the pricing suggestions that Airbnb and Vrbo give you, because Airbnb and Vrbo want their prices to be competitive, whereas us as the host want to maximize our revenue. So those goals are kind of at odds with one another. And then the third thing that we use just to kind of help reduce some of the management workload is our digital guidebook. So giving guests both written and video instructions on how to use the property, we found tremendously reduces the amount of questions that we get from folks, and it kind of reduce the amount of time we have to spend managing the property. So just quickly recapping, you need property management software, you need dynamic pricing tools, and you need a digital guidebook.
Do you have a program that you use for the guidebook, or do you do Airbnb's guidebook?
I don't use the Airbnb functionality because we book on both Airbnb and Vrbo. And if your guidebook's only available through Airbnb, then anyone who books through Vrbo won't have a guidebook. So we typically go with a third-party platform. I've seen some people that just do it like in Canva, right? They'll create like a digital version in Canva that's like really aesthetically pleasing. And then there are companies that offer like digital guidebook services. So Hostfully has a digital guidebook. Breezeway has a digital guidebook. I think some of these other PMSs have digital guidebooks as well, but I prefer the software version because it's a little bit easier to update on the fly. You don't have to print anything out and just send it to the guests when they check in.
I actually just hired, because up until this fall, I only had one short-term rental, and my cleaner just took care of everything for it. She did all the messaging, everything. And then as I started to add a couple more units, I decided that I should be more like Tony and I should put some systems in place. So I actually hired somebody to do the research, and I basically just told them what I wanted the software to do for me. And they actually put it all together for me. And we use Hostfully. So we do the guidebook through Hostfully, but it's also the property management software. We use that side of it too. And then we use Remote Lock to set up automated key codes for everyone that integrates into the messaging that we send to everyone as to what their key code is, and automatically changes it for each person. So those are really the only two that we use that I know of. At least she might have something else in there. Tony, for the cleaner, do you use something separate for your cleaner? Because I think we have that where it sends them an email when a new booking is, and then they can accept it or decline it. I don't know if that's through Hostfully or not, how we have it set up. I'm not sure. Yeah.
So a lot of the channel managers have some limited functionality to manage your cleaning staff and your maintenance staff. So initially, up until about 4 or 5 months ago, we handled that all through our channel manager. More recently, we added in a second software, not a second software, like our fourth software that's specifically focused on our cleaning and our maintenance staff, and it's called Breezeway. Gosh, I know we have like an affiliate link. I'll share it with you afterwards. It's breezeway.io/Robinsons. And I think if you use that, you get like 25% off or something like that. But Breezeway is really cool because, it integrates with your PMS. So like all of your bookings are like populated into the calendar, and it forces your cleaners to go through a checklist they have to complete in order to mark a clean as done. And it actually requires them to submit photos as they're going through the property and completing all of those steps. So I can see, like, for example, one of the things that we were getting messages on from our guests was that that there were no sponges, but we know that we've instructed our cleaners to leave sponges. So now in our cleaning checklist, they have to take a photo of the cabinet underneath the sink open so we can see that there are trash bags, dish pods, and sponges underneath the sink. And there's a lot of functionality like that where it can kind of help hold your cleaners accountable. So we use Breezeway. It's been really great for us.
And then as far as when you turn the basement one into a long-term rental, I think Rent Ready is a great one just for having that one unit, or even, the first 10 units. They have every kind of aspect that you need in the software, such as collecting rent online, doing your bookkeeping. They have, leases that you can sign electronically on there. It's very basic. You can pay for, add-ons, such as if someone has a maintenance request, you can actually sign up for their call center where you have a dedicated number that the person calls and someone on their team troubleshoots it with them or dispatches a vendor that you would like them to use for whatever the problem is. So There's also Aval, there's apartments.com, even Zillow has started to build out some kind of, rent manager system. And then for another kind of piece to doing the long-term management, it's RentReady, Aval, apartments.com. I'm trying to think, I know there's one other big one too. That's great for just starting out. But as far as like growing and scaling, then there's Appfolio, Buildium, Property, where these ones have a minimum fee where it doesn't really make sense until maybe you're at 20 to 30 units to actually implement that software. And they just have more bells and whistles. But the same thing with short-term rental or long-term rental, the software has so much automation in it that it makes it very easy to actually run your units remotely and then manage them that way. And also too, like look at just like Googling different messaging too. And instead of like having to think, okay, what should my message say to the guest when they book? Or what should it say to somebody the day they move into their long-term rental unit? Like you can easily find samples online and then just kind of tweak and tailor it to your property specifically. Then as you add additional units, you just copy and paste and tweak it. And a lot of times the software will have templates too, at least in the long-term rental side, is so that it will automatically pull the tenant's name, the property address, and input that. And you can send out everything to, all your different units if you need to. Like, for example, there's going to be someone snow plowing the driveway on this day and you want to send it to the 4 units in your quadplex, it will automatically put in each person's name, things like that, and send it out. So I think integrating, the short-term rental and the long-term rental property management software, it takes some time to get it set up, but the automation that it can provide will really, really help you. And like you said, you need to focus on the rehab side of it. So
yeah, I need to de-stress.
Yeah.
And Tony, real quick, do you want to touch on just like using virtual assistants to run some of these pieces of that too?
Yeah, honestly, I think virtual assistants are probably one of the most underutilized like team building aspects for real estate investors. Like it doesn't get talked about enough. Right now we have 5 VAs on our team. So 3 that focus on operations, 2 that focus on pricing and our software stack. And one of my biggest regrets as a real estate investor was not hiring those folks sooner, for the amount of like cost that you have to pay these folks in comparison to the value that they provide. It's a really big return on investment there, and they're definitely allow you to kind of scale up your business faster with a little less headache. And if you plan to build a decently sized portfolio, like if you want more than one property and that you want more than one property, hiring those people on that first property makes it so much easier, because now you guys are learning together. You're able to kind of set those strong foundations. So that way you've got really tight processes at one property. So when you get to 5 or 10, it's just a matter of adding more units and not necessarily trying to scale your team at the same time.
And the great thing too is that even if you have one property, you can find virtual assistants who are working for maybe 10 different investors with only a few units. So you can easily afford them because you're sharing the cost basically, because they're working for a ton of other people, where maybe if you found somebody local, they want, a part-time job that's at least 20 hours or something like that. So I think that's a huge advantage too. So going on Fiverr or Upwork are 2 great places to start to look for the virtual assistants. Okay, well, before we wrap it up, is there anything else that we can help you with?
No, I'm so appreciative of you guys. I'm getting feedback, but thank you guys. I really appreciate you for having me on.
We are so glad that you came on, and thank you again for purchasing the Real Estate Rookie book, because it led you to us.
Never thought that would happen.
It was great to meet you and for you to share your journey. And where would be the best place for people to follow you and keep updated on what you have going on with your duplex?
Well, I don't post a lot, but I am on Instagram at Sara, Queusara.
You'll have to share your journey. Yeah, post more on it.
Yeah.
Hey, and do you have, before we close out, do you have an idea of when you want to take your short-term rental live?
By the end of May. That's heavy season.
That's soon. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, we wish you the best of luck. And thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. And even though you're a rookie, you provided so much value to this episode. And I think a lot of people will take away some lessons learned, but also a lot of motivation and inspiration from you. So thank you for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
I'm Ashley at Wealth from Rentals, and he's Tony at Tony J. Robinson. And we will be back with another episode. See you guys soon.